Hello, everyone. So today's session is about Ramsar Convention, and I would like to introduce very briefly to the Ramsar Convention. The next slide. So for the very to be brief, the name of the treaty comes from a very small city called Ramsar, Iran, in 1971. It was one of the first of the global nature conservation conventions that is established today, and it is known as Multilateral Environmental Agreement, or MEA. The broad aim of the Ramsar Convention is to halt wetland loss and conserve wetlands. Wetlands is a transboundary water between land and water, and it is not often designated as ocean or land per SDG 13 and 14, and therefore it will be better to have a separate one and to mention wetlands specifically. Please mute yourself. Yeah, thank you. Sorry. And so it's about international cooperation, policy making, capacity building, and technology transfer as a baseline on how to ensure that this Commission on Wetlands is made. Continue on. So the Ramsar wetlands are specifically designated by parties, which I will introduce later. And in the case of the Ramsar definition for wetlands, it can be natural or artificial, permanent or temporary, in order to be recognized as a Ramsar wetland. So these wetlands can be swamps, marshes, lakes, salt marshes, mudflats, mangroves, coral reefs, ferns, peat bogs, or any other relevant bodies of water that contains this. And for the water, it can be anything, like it can be static or flowing, fresh, brackish, or saline. It can also be rivers that are inland or coastal or marine water to anything that has a depth of 6 meters at low tide. So it is a very diverse range of wetlands. And so it is basically how they are recognized to ensure that they are rare or unique wetlands or anything that is important for biological diversity. And once they are existed based on this criteria, then they're added to the Ramsar list of wetlands of international importance, known as Ramsar sites. Continue on. Next slide, please. So for Ramsar site, currently there are 172 parties according to the Ramsar website. The framework is, as said before, is to conserve wetland and promote wise use. Currently, there are around 2,500 lists of wetlands of international importance listed. And among this, as you can see on this map, there are many Ramsar sites, and many of them are in Europe area. And among this, the largest sites are in Brazil, called Rio Negro. It's over 100,000 square kilometers. And there's also another one called Nguri Tomba Mendombe in Congo and Quima Gulf in Canada, each 60,000 square kilometers. So among owners of this three, it's already 240,000, which accounts for like over 90% of the total sites of the wetlands. And so it also means that many of the other sites can be less than 0.01 square kilometers or 1 hectare. And then, yes, and then, yeah, continue on. The next slide, please. So these are like a summary of what is the wetlands of international importance for how to make sure that each wetland is recognized as a wetland. There are like two groups. So group A, there's only one criteria that the sites have to contain representative rare or unique wetland types. And group B is the site of international importance for conserving biological diversity. And the following are like those specific criteria and the sites. And in each there are like specific criteria which I will mention from now on, like very briefly. I will not go into many details because we have only like a very short time. Yeah, continue on. So in group A, there's only one criteria, as I mentioned before. It refers to site containing representative, rare, or unique resident types. So the first criteria on the list is defined as a wetland should be considered internationally important if it contains a representative, rare, or unique example of a natural or near natural wetland type found within the appropriate biogeographic region. And this picture shows South Marsh City Amos, and I apologize if I pronounce it wrong, in Samos, Greece. Samos is a small island in Greece in the Aegean Sea in the east coast. So it is a rare wetland in the region. As you see, there are like consistent monitoring of these wetlands to ensure that they're effectively managed and that, for example, the biodiversity is really controlled.
So,
So in this wetland in Greece, is for example, it has more than 150 protected bird species despite such a small space. And also there's also like some other rare fauna and flora. And this is also a Natura 2000 site for years. But however, there are no protection or management measures as of 2015. And therefore, it's very important that in this area there has to be really consistent monitoring and to make sure that the biodiversity is conserved and also human impact is assessed as this commonly visited by humans. And this also there are like populations of native and migratory birds that frequently use this site for migration or raising their flocks. And also this it's not just about biology or any species in consideration, but it's also physics and chemicals that has to be controlled, ensure that the wetland is healthy and not toxic to its ecosystem. And then it's very important to incorporate local society as cooperation. But that's just one example that really fits the wetland as a whole. But that's just one example that that we like to focus for this particular wetland. Continue on. So I'm just gonna read through this really quickly. So for Group B, sites of international importance for conservation of biological diversity, and there are like three criteria within this Group B, and they specific focus on species in ecological communities. So criterion 2 is a wetland should be considered internationally important if it supports vulnerable, endangered, or critically endangered species or threatened communities. So in this way, it really talks about communities and how the species can be endangered and how they can be conserved. And the third criterion is that the wetland should be internationally important so that it supports populations of plant or any animal species um, that is important for biodiversity of particular biogeographic region. And criterion 4, a wetland should be considered internationally important if it supports plant or any other species, a critical space in their life cycles, or provide refuge during adverse conditions. Yeah, just continue on. And just to continue within group B, there's also another criteria specifically for water birds. So for criteria 5, that it should support 20,000 or more water birds, and 6, and it should support 1% of individuals in population of one species or subspecies of water bird. And continue on. And there's a specific one of fish, and including indigenous fish subspecies, species or families, life history stages, species interactions, and or populations that are representative of wetlands benefits and or values, or thereby contributes to global biological diversity. And it's also very important as food for fish, spawning ground, nursery, or any migration path on which fish stocks either within the wetlands or as well depend. Well, that really so that is, for example, that there's also migratory salmon that is wetland that often connected oceans. So there's also like for example, the migratory salmon species or any salmonid that travels between wetland and oceans, as salmon usually spawns in the wetland. And so therefore it's very important that the spawning ground is also monitored to ensure that it's not just salmon that's conserved, but it's also its fish. That's it. Yeah, continue on. Oh, I also forgot to say that it's not just animals like salmonid, but also the turbulence of the water flow, as it really measures that the fish flow, the chemical composition, is also safe for the fish to spawn or for the long-term survival. And finally, for the criterion, is that the wetland should support 1% of the individuals in a population of one species or subspecies of wetland-dependent non-animal species. So that includes any other species like mammals. Yeah, last slide. I'm moving really quickly because it's meant for 10 minutes, but I'm just gonna overextend. So these are the two examples that can be really defined as in the criteria as I mentioned before. So Arizona iringo, known as Eryngium sparganophyllum, in the scientific name, is found only in 2 regions in Arizona state of the United States. And there's only 2 populations, and they're near Tucson or in the San Pedro Riparian National Conservation Area. And so this is one of the, so this Arizona iringo is part of the carrot family, and it relies on pollinators like butterflies and hummingbirds to reproduce. So it also means that the butterflies and hummingbirds are part of the ecosystem, and without these butterflies and hummingbirds, this species also cannot survive. So it also means that the butterflies and hummingbirds also need to be conserved within the wetland conservation. And so it's not just particularly rely on one criterion, but it usually also has more than one criterion to focus on this. And now currently the conservation efforts are there to establish more populations of this plant species. And then the picture on the right is called painted stork or Mycteria leucocephala. So this is a migratory species found in India called Rangana T2 Bird Sanctuary, India. So the bird sanctuary, which is also like diverse across the globe, that is really also very important for wetlands, even though the public known as may not know them as wetlands, because a lot of population or public do come to this bird sanctuary to observe the migratory species that often visit the species during certain time of the year. And this wetland is in Karnataka of England, India, and it was the first time a wetland in this region was designated as a Ramsar site. And this is actually was published last year in a news article was published last year in August, so it's really recent. And so now, as we see, that India is also like getting to have more Ramsar sites declared, and yeah, and that's really brief, but thank you. And yeah, these are just some examples. So I would like to ask the audience if you can contribute this contribution to have any examples that you know in region of the wetlands that maybe you can share your insights about wetlands in region, because we have diverse of our audience from different across the world. It would be great. Yeah, thank you for my presentation. Meanwhile.
Thank you so much for your presentation, Yoko. It's very well done, and thank you for that. I applaud you for a brief overview of the Ramsar Convention. And yes, for all participants, these slides will be shared after the presentation.
Yeah, thank you for everyone about positive comments in the chat. But meanwhile, can anyone else say some examples of wetlands in your country? Oh, sorry, I was muted. Please, Ashish, please, or Joshua, anyone? It would be nice if you can speak because it's recorded.
Oh yeah, well, I was just saying I have one in my country. It's called the Carney Swamp. I'm not sure if anybody else will have a Ramsar site. I don't know if they have a Ramsar site, but I'm sure there's lots. So yeah, that's mine.
Great to know that. Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. So I come from Nepal. It's a mountain region, so there are probably only 9 wetlands which are included in the Ramsar sites. It's usually in the lower part of the region. There are probably 3 of Ramsar sites, and in the upper part, especially in the Himalayan region, there are remaining 5 of the remaining Ramsar sites. There are a lot of them, and interesting place and observation. Thank you so much for the beautiful presentation. And great to see Joshua actually. Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for some comments. Anyone else? Okay, maybe I will ask the question differently, because I only so I actually try my best to focus my presentation on more like background policy, but I did not really continue with how to engage, just because it was really introduction to the convention itself. So I did not really include like more other things like citizen science and how to get involved. But I can give some examples, for example, from my own experience. So I am from Vancouver, and specifically somewhere called Richmond. And Richmond is an island, and it's like actually below sea level. So it is actually a risk to the climate change, meaning that the wetlands here does have a risk to climate change effects. I mean, I'm not specifically talking about climate change, but in general, like, because when we say the people who are like most vulnerable to climate change or marginalized communities, we often miss something, miss a concept note, is that even though we're from a country, the country is really diverse. Like most of these countries, like that is bordered to the ocean, for example, we have like islands or areas that are like vulnerable to the climate change, for example. So in terms of wetlands in Richmond, we call them bog. Like it's a specific term for specific type of wetlands here in Canada. And so I'm not going to go into too many details, but where I live in Richmond, so I used to go to a high school here, and we used to like have this educational program for edible gardening project, and that edible gardening is located in a low lying like wetland defined area that it can also be used for like edible wetlands they can grow. And another example is that in a local park, I mean famous Vancouver park called Stanley Park, where I used to volunteer. And so there we also have a like unique environment that we have beavers, for example. It's like a species that is a national, like one of the national species of Canada. And the beavers tend to use like this wetland as a habitat. And there's also many other species like amphibians, birds, fish. So from this volunteering program at Stanley Park, we did some like citizen science. Like we surveyed volunteers, the park visitors of like where they're from and how they use this park. Like this park is in the wetland. So we use like some surveys on how to seek how how the park is used. And it also has, so the park is not just wetland, but it also has a old growth forest. And old growth forest is basically a forest that is not it's more natural forest, and it has wetlands within. So meaning that, as I said before, it's transboundary because this Stanley Park it is located in a strait, like in a water system that connects the ocean, but it also has wetlands within the park. And so it's a really diverse, like interesting island that has all sort of ecosystems. It also definitely has migratory birds. I mean, to be specifically, we have American coots or snow geese that come like visit every year. So yeah, these are just really like brief. And then we also have like educational programs for like high school students or university students. I like Vancouver Aquarium, which is also in the Stanley Park. That we also have like beach cleanups or teach them about intertidal coastal ecosystems. I mean, these are not necessarily wetlands, but they are connected to wetlands, but they also can also be classified as wetlands. So yeah, so that's how like people can get involved through volunteering. Specifically there's something called the Stanley Park Ecological Society, which is it's like a local stewardship organization that manages the Stanley Park as a whole, and it does include school students to come and be part of the program. And that's how like we can contribute. So like locally. And then yeah, so it's actually probably wiser to also to get locally and how we can bring this into international level and really discuss this and maybe also to collaborate. Yeah, just for example, I mean, there's only 5 minutes left. Anyone else like who maybe have direct involvement in wetlands, like volunteering or any positive outcomes or anything we would like to share? Maybe I will just continue on giving an example of Canada. So Canada has over 1.9.
Oh no, I just want to say, Yoko, we kind of went over time already, so it's quite right. We can end right now if you wish.
Yeah, we can end now if we wish. Yeah, there's only 4 minutes
Yeah.
left. Oh, Arab.
Oh, we have a raised hand. Yeah.
Arab. Yeah,
Please.
please.
Hello. Hello?
Yes, hello? Yes?
You can hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good day, everyone. Nice meeting everyone. And Yoko, nice presentation. Actually, I have a question. I presently reside at the middle belt of Nigeria. I have friends, colleagues who live at Nigeria South, River State to be precise. I know of one wetland which is part of the Ramsar Convention. I think Nigeria has 11. One is the Upper Orange, I think, forest in river. Now, the south of Nigeria actually faces a lot of challenges of pollution, oil leaks, and uh, fossil fuel exploitation for petroleum and all that. So the question now is such wetlands which are already polluted, and I think this is me, a friend of mine who have been challenging a while back, who worked with an oil company in River State, posted something on WhatsApp, and I saw gas flares. I asked, I said, okay, those rivers and water bodies around, when they are polluted, what do people in those communities do? Because these communities are actually indigenous and marginalized communities, and where they have no. So in that part, what do these individuals do to actually carry out something protect and preserve them?
Okay. Arab, I think you're having some technical difficulty with your sound. Can you please type your question in chat? You're kind of breaking up.
Can you hear me now?
It's
Barely.
good.
Okay, can you hear me presently?
Yes.
Yeah, we're hearing
Okay.
better. Yeah.
So I said I have friends who reside at Nigeria South, River State to be precise, where I know one of the Ramsar Convention sites is. I think Upper Orange Network is there. I mean, wetland is there. So my problem is that side South within Nigeria is mostly affected by pollution, oil leaks and spillage, and fossil fuel exploitation. So in this sense, those indigenous communities or marginalized communities who have no access to funding or a lot of sponsorship, what do they do as individuals, indigenous individuals, to clean up such wetlands? Because those wetlands are actually becoming death traps to them due to being and we all know the influence of pollution on marine and aquatic life. So what do you
Hello, we cannot hear anymore. Are you still talking, Arab? Arab? Or are you finished?
I think it's cut off, but the question was regarding how indigenous and local communities can get involved to help clean up their local areas. I think that's just what we're trying to get at.
I think that was a comment of him, not a question. Or did
Okay.
I misunderstand? No, I thought he was commenting on a situation rather than okay, so indigenous peoples. Well, that's another topic. So I'm not an indigenous person at all, but I know that in Canada, we have a network of indigenous peoples that they live across different parts of the world in their local communities, and they're part of the system that have overlook at the government framework of this area that has wetlands. But that's all I can say for now. That it's definitely important to have indigenous part of this plan. But I'm pretty sure they have, like in Canada, that they have indigenous act that indigenous people directly contributed to the wetland conservation. Yeah, that's it for me. Yeah, but I would like to continue, but we don't have that much time because I just realized I forgot to comment in the chat that Joshua commented that there's a Ramsar site in Trinidad and Tobago, or just Trinidad. something called Colony Swamp. And then Andrea Alejandra Martinez, sorry, was commenting that in Mexico, there's more than 100 sites. And then Alejandro James from Colombia said his city has 11 sites, which he's actively involved. And then Arab says Nigeria has 11 Ramsar sites. That's from the general comment in the chat. It would be great if Alejandro can specify what's the name of the city. But yeah, I mean, it's a good that we have a really good conversation in the chat and interactive. Now, I mean, time is out, so I'll just conclude this meeting. Thank you for joining.